While Disney, as of late, has made a lot of headlines when it comes to the theme parks and the fact they have had a couple of movies this summer break the $1 billion mark, one of the things that a lot of people aren't really focusing on, but I think is a much bigger deal than people realize, is Bob Iger has been looking for his successor. And apparently, we have a story here from Barron's where it's been narrowed down to the top two. Now, Bob Iger is supposed to leave in 2026. So we would assume in the year 2025 that they would have it narrowed down to the person who is going to take over, and there would be more of a grooming process that went on versus how Iger just handed it over to Bob Chapek just right before COVID hit and then eventually took it back. But we're going to go through this article here from Barron's and get some thoughts on it. So hi, I'm Jared with Capture the Magic, and again, the headline here is Disney narrows search for the next Bob Iger. Don't think that's a good thing. How the top two CEO candidates stack up. It says it looks like Walt Disney is narrowing the list of candidates to replace Bob Iger as CEO, and there are reasons for investors to be optimistic. Now, Barron's is an investment frame of mind here, so just keep that in mind because I'm not giving you financial advice. But two senior executives at the company are said to be neck and neck to get the top job when Iger's contract ends in 2026. Here we look at the marks for and against the both candidates. Disney Experiences chairman Josh D'Amaro and co-chair of Disney Entertainment Dana Walden are leading the pack, according to the Wall Street Journal, which cited company insiders. And they're referring to this article from the Wall Street Journal where the headline is, "He raised Disney park prices and fans still love him. Now he's on the CEO shortlist." So they bring up theme park points here. In his time running Disney's Experiences division, which includes theme parks, cruises, consumer products, and video games, D'Amaro has drummed up hundreds of millions of dollars in new revenue by hiking prices and launching new rides. This is true. Also, taking things that used to be included in your trip and then charging for them. So D'Amaro is reportedly often a close presence at Iger's side during media conferences, and the park's boss said in a recent interview with a Disney fan radio show that the weatherman turned media exec calls him daily, which is true. He's talking about Bob Iger. Bob Iger was a weatherman when he started. That's where that comes from. One mark against D'Amaro, though, is that the growth for the division he oversees has flatlined this year. Disney's June quarter earnings beat analyst expectations, but shares still fell after investors zeroed in on falling operating income in the experiences unit. The company blamed a, quote, moderation in consumer demand, with a slowing economy and softening jobs market chipping away at how much disposable income Americans can afford to spend on trips to theme parks, which the whole moderation consumer demand is there's less demand. It's just they have fancy ways of saying things. At a time where economically things aren't great for lots of people, Disney has been continuing to raise prices. So people, aren't traveling as much. And when they are traveling, they're not wanting to spend as much money while Disney is still charging more. That's basically the gist of that. The talk about streaming success is going to be talking about Dana Walden. The same set of results showed that Disney's combined streaming business, which includes Disney Plus, Hulu, and ESPN, had turned a quarterly profit for the first time ever, logging operating income of $47 million. That small but symbolic figure could be a point in Walden's favor, given the entertainment giant has lost tens of billions of dollars in the so-called streaming wars as it battles for market share against rivals such as Netflix and Amazon Prime. I don't quite understand how one quarter of being profitable would override what they just followed that up with, saying that the fact that it's lost tens of billions of dollars up until that point. Now, Disney Plus still isn't profitable, and they had one quarter where they showed a profit, but don't be surprised if it goes back to not showing a profit because, some of these quarters were much lighter given that they had the strike, not as much stuff was being made or filmed, things like that. They're going to mention that former Morgan Stanley CEO James Gordon is leading the search to find Iger's successor. Said whoever gets the job will have a tough task on their hands. Disney shares are down 13% over the last 3 months, compared with a 7% jump for the benchmark S&P 500, and with investors fretting about slowing demand for theme parks and a costly deal to buy NBC Universal owner Comcast's minority stake in Hulu. So basically, that was a long-winded way of saying that apparently, according to insiders, that the CEO search is down to Josh D'Amaro and Dana Walden. Now, if I obviously have no idea about this, just looking from the outside in. Now, first off, I just want to say I would prefer, and I think the best thing for Disney as a whole would be new blood coming in. I think somebody from the outside would be the best bet because I have never been a fan of Iger. I think he's bought things, but I think in terms of being a CEO like his predecessor, Michael Eisner, who, by the way, Michael Eisner wasn't perfect, but you can't argue against the fact that Michael Eisner, took risks, tried things, revitalized the theme parks in Disney as a whole, and really it set the foundation for what Disney World became and still is to this day that they're riding the coattails off of. So I don't think Iger is even close to an Eisner. I think he's bought things. I don't think those things that they've bought have really been managed that well. I think the best of them being probably Marvel. Yet again, they bought Fox, and then part of that Fox deal buying Hulu. And they bring up that Hulu part of it because they're still not clear on how much they're going to have to pay. It's in arbitration. It's likely that Disney's going to end up paying far more than I think they originally said it was going to cost $8 billion or something like that. They're going to end up paying much more for that, which that whole Fox deal is going to end up being closer to $100 billion deal by the end of the day on that. So for that reason, I think somebody from outside the company with a vision and an idea of basically bringing back Disney what they used to be would be good. But since Iger is the one, finding the next contender, he's going to find somebody much like him. So that doesn't give me a lot of confidence. But if we're looking at the two, Dana Walden and Josh D'Amaro, obviously we've covered the theme parks quite a bit. Josh D'Amaro would make a lot of sense if you're looking for someone internally, because if you look at the financials for Disney, the parks now, or I guess you would call the experiences division, last year brought in over 70% of the overall revenue for the company. So now the parks are basically the majority driver of the entire company. So it would make sense if at least to Disney internally, they view the parks as successful, which they still are. I mean, they have the number one ranked theme park in the world in terms of attendance, but there's a lot of, I guess you could say you're on a boat and there's a lot of leaks springing up. And you also have a bigger, a big competitor boat coming up with Universal Studios and Epic Universe that is going to continue to add leaks to that ship, if you want to use that analogy. But it would make sense for them to look at D'Amaro because he's brought in more money. And not to mention with D'Amaro, he does have his own fan following. And the Wall Street Journal article talked about that, how, I've seen it in the parks. If he's out in the parks, I mean, you have mostly women running up to him, wanting a bunch of pictures with him, and people, he is personable. He is out there to talk to people. So that I think is something that people do like about him. So from just I guess a fan perspective, or at least a vibe perspective, I can see them also going with D'Amaro for that reason, because he's popular in the parks. He's popular overall. He's got a big following on Instagram. He's, I guess you could call, I would call him a middle-aged woman thirst trap in a way. He's a good looking guy. So he's out there and very personable, versus Dana Walden, who doesn't have that public persona. She is the head of the, TV side of things, which does have, that is a powerful position. Now I can't say I know much about her. Really, D'Amaro, in terms of like who would run the company best, I don't really think either one of them are anybody that I would choose for the head of Disney. Disney is a very unique company, and I almost think you need to go back to how it used to be when you had Michael Eisner and you had Frank Wells. You had somebody who was the ideas person and someone who's maybe the more financial side, and they kind of meet in the middle on things. I think when it comes to Disney, that wouldn't be a bad setup, which is why I still think a dark horse candidate that they're not talking about is Kevin Mayer and Tom Staggs, who currently are the head of Candle Media. Now, these two were in the running last time for the CEO before Bob Chapek was announced that he was going to be the predecessor. And they both went on to form Candle Media. So they're kind of a duo combo, I guess, head of a company as it is. And they have been advising Iger. They've been consulting with him, which this article and other ones lately haven't mentioned, but they are in Iger's ear. So I still wouldn't be surprised on some level if it went to them. Now, I think there are some specifics about how that would work. I think Disney would technically have to buy Candle Media to make that work, which I don't know how much it would cost. I don't know how much they're worth, but given that Disney likes to spend money, it's not out of the realm of possibility, although I don't think that they want to be buying more things currently. As again, the stock price isn't going well, and there's a lot of, I guess you could call issues on the horizon in terms of things like that. So personally speaking, I think outside the company would be best. But if I had my gut instinct on some of the inside, I would say D'Amaro probably makes the most sense from an optics standpoint. Again, head of the parks, which is the biggest division in the company, and also like at the D23 events, D'Amaro is the forefront person there. He's the one that's presenting everything. He's hosting it. He's the head of it. He talks about it all. So he's already out there in many ways as obviously like a leader of the parks division, but he does have a lot of experience when it comes to I guess you would say the optics side of being a CEO, which is, in this day and age, that's a decent aspect of it. Is how are you viewed when it comes to people like that view the company, fans of it, and things like that. So I definitely think he has that side of things pretty well because again, he's a lot of people are fans of him. He has that sort of demeanor about it, and from that perspective, I could see how they would be looking him to make sense. Now, Disney very likely would love though for their first female CEO, and I think that they could give it to Dana Walden based on that because it's kind of would be Disney's MO on some level as well. I don't know anything about her leadership capabilities. I've heard pros and cons about it, but I wouldn't be, either way, I'm not going to be surprised who gets it. But if I had a gut instinct, I almost think it would be D'Amaro. Now, what he knows about other aspects of the company, I don't know. I'm sure that's something you get trained on, but at least as of now, it looks like they're narrowing down the search. In terms of like when they would name it, that's a really good question. I don't know when they would. If Iger is leaving in 2026, it would make sense to make the announcement of who the replacement is going to be in 2025, and that gives them time to sort of get everyone used to it. I'm sure the investors will want to know more about them, but given a lot of it is like an optics thing when it comes to CEOs, I almost think that they've been grooming D'Amaro on some before. And I can't say that I'm for it. I don't think he's done a great job in the parks. He's the one that's been in charge since prices have been raised, since the, take away bunches of stuff that was included. Now they're charging for it. It's hard to know though how much of that was D'Amaro and how much of that was like Chapek and Iger. It's hard to really know. But given that he is the head of that division, it would assume that he is making the calls on these things. So I can't say that I think he's done a great job on the parks, even though financially speaking, they're showing obviously big revenues because they're just charging more for things that used to be free and charging more for things in general. But I suppose we'll find out probably, I would assume, sometime in 2025 about who they're deciding to go with. And, if anybody news on this, we'll obviously make a video about it and talk about it. But as of now, that is going to be it, though, for this video. If you like this video, please like it and subscribe to the channel as we do lots of coverage here of Disney World, Universal Studios, Epic Universe, and pop culture. And let us know in the comments, what do you think about these two being the final candidates for the Disney CEO? And until next time, we will see you later.